Hey guys, it's Matt. This video is meant to be shared. Many of the things we typically talk about I won't mention here. There won't be any dumb jokes or character acting. I was at my mother's house for Christmas Eve dinner, and we started to. I didn't think these people could be awakened in any way, and they're certainly not there. But they took one step forward out of 100 steps, and I was shocked. We started to talk about a few things. They let me speak. It wasn't as controversial as some of the things I presented in the past, but started talking about politics. And just before getting into the premise of this video, the reality itself gives itself away in its presentation. I know that's awfully controversial and conspiratorial to start with, but I'm going to show you how unnatural what reality in this society, in this culture presents to us. And it's almost, for anybody with a degree of open-mindedness, it's almost easy to see through, but it's going to take a few minutes for me to work into the premise. I started talking about politics to my mother and my stepfather, and I basically said in a mini presentation, it's remarkable to people like me that anyone can believe in this clown show, this sideshow, this three-ring circus anymore. How many buffoons need to be put up as president or prime minister or speaker of the house? How many lowlife, cretins, buffoons, degenerates need to be put up before you see that this is more like WWE, WWF wrestling? It's a presentation. It's a performance. It's a show. And there was no pushback. I mean, they don't want to agree with that, but they would, in the past, they would have normally engaged me. And I don't even know how I got even a chance to say that, because as I've said, and we've agreed many times, we're not out to wake anybody up anymore. But when that part of the conversation came up, maybe somebody had just come on television and it was relevant to what we're talking about. There was no pushback. So it's almost like I got a sense that they were sensing that, yeah, this presentation of politics, it couldn't possibly be real or legitimate or what it's presented to be. Just candidates vying for your votes. There's much more going on, and people are starting to sense that. And before I get into the premise of what this presentation is about, let's just start with this. I'm showing the movie or thumbnails from the movie Inception. And I don't even know if this scene is from Inception, but I think there was a movie somewhere that presented something like this. Either way, it doesn't matter. A guy is sitting at a bar, and it's similar to a theme in Shallow Hal. All these beautiful women keep coming up and talking to him. I'm just a regular guy, never had that much luck. And a guy sits down next to him. He says, "Sir," or maybe he knows him, "Joe, you're dreaming, dude." And it seems completely real, of course. What do you mean I'm dreaming? Like the levels in Inception. Nobody knew they were dreaming. They had to spin that little thing to see what level or plane of dream they were on, or if they were in the real world. And he said, Joe, three beautiful. Have you ever had any success, Joe, in your whole life with beautiful women? And Joe was, well, no, I haven't. Three beautiful women in 5 minutes just came over and basically threw themselves at you. Now, you can think all of a sudden your luck's changed, or you can understand you're dreaming. And at some point, maybe it would take two more beautiful women to come try to pick up Joe in a 10-minute span. But at some point, Joe's going to say, yeah, this isn't possible. I must be dreaming, or the reality itself would start to be questioned. A horrible example I've used in the past, it's not horrible, I like it, but it's goofy, is if you went into a stadium, a full crowded stadium, and sat next to somebody and said, hey, we're going to be here for 3 hours next to each other. What's your name? Joe, I forget the name I used before, Joe Winkleshear or Joseph Winkleshear. And the person's like, that's my name. Joseph Winkleshear is your name and my name too? Like John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. But then what's your name? Section 5, row 2, right in front. Oh, I'm Mary Winkleshear, and here's my husband, Joseph Winkleshear. It's like once you start meeting more than just 10 Joseph Winkleshears in a row, then you can either believe it's just a coincidence, Or you can start saying, well, wait a second. You would look once you met 10, maybe for some people it would take 20 in a row. But it shouldn't really take more than 2 or 3 in a row. But at some point, you would start to question the reality itself. You wouldn't believe that everybody in the stadium is Josef Winkelschere. That's not possible. So you would say, even if what you could come up with would be limited between your bookends, you could say, I'm dreaming, or I've been alien abducted, and this is some sort of holodeck. You would at least look for explanations that are not a coincidence. Oh, it's just a coincidence. It's possible that the whole stadium's full of Josef Winkelsheres. No, it's not. And that's the literal reality and culture we have today has presented its impossible string of synchronicities, impossible coincidences, impossible scenarios so many times that you can do that with the culture, society, and reality itself and say this isn't very real. And we're going to do that in just one little area today. One little area. If you had hundreds and hundreds of hours, I could keep going into all the other areas. But this one area may be just enough to get your attention to say, okay, wait a second. Something is not right here. And this person making this presentation, who I would have called a conspiracy theorist madman, is actually making sense if you will allow yourself to think big enough. Okay, here's the reality exercise. Something to notice. If you want to write it off as a coincidence, write it off as a coincidence, but have 1,000 more of these where this came from, if anybody's interested. In every single facet of society, in terms of where somebody chooses a side, or picks a camp, or associates themselves with something, the leader of that group, especially, again, whenever somebody associates with something, politics, of course, is the place to start. The leader, or the authority figure, or the celebrity, or the person that is most well known, is incredibly divisive and polarizing to a degree where it gets worse and worse every year. This is where reality gives itself away. So I'm going to go through these quickly. You either love this woman or you absolutely hate her, and I mean hate. Now, if this was a one-off, fine, but this happens across the board in our culture, society, and reality. Loved by a few and absolutely hated. If anybody's driving, I just showed Nancy Pelosi. I'm showing Boris Johnson. Let's go through them so you have an idea what I'm saying. And as I go through them, you'll say, yeah, this isn't natural. I want you to notice that this isn't natural. These figures are there because they create hatred and ire. It's not, it just happens to be this way time after time after time. How many times do you have to be the guy sitting at the bar that has never even gotten a date? Beautiful woman comes up. Would you like to go up to my room? Beautiful woman. Well, he has to consider other options. So I don't want to say that again. I think you got it. Donald Trump. What a coincidence that the Hillary Clinton-Donald Trump election, the most polarizing election in the history of the known universe. Most people voted out of the hate for the other group, not because they loved their candidate. Again, if this was one-off, fine. It happens across the board. Donald Trump, the leader of the Republicans, a loathsome figure, even in his own party, Mitch McConnell. Wouldn't eventually people that could actually bring people together get into these positions? Okay, let's just get through this. The most popular hardcore liberal host on cable news, Rachel Maddow, loved by a small group and hated by a larger group. Rush Limbaugh was hated outside of hardcore conservative circles. Joe Biden is hated outside of the hardcore blue states. Bill O'Reilly was hated. Okay, Pope Francis, okay, a little bit less, but still incredibly polarizing. I know when he came to Philadelphia, they closed the whole city. He's loved, but he's just as polarizing on the other side, changing the church's tenets on gay marriage and all that sort of thing. Incredible polarizing. What a coincidence. Top leader here, the most polarizing figure in history. Top president here, the most polarizing figure in history. This happens over and over and over again. It's a characteristic or symptom of reality itself, and it's not natural. Leaders in the church. Joel, this is Joel Ovaltine. Loved by a few, hated by others. I mean, I don't. I have a limited number of tabs. Bill Gates, loved by some, hated, but he's meant to be hated. All these people are basically playing a role where, without them even being aware of it, their role in society is to create the division, is to create people sitting down at the Thanksgiving table together that don't talk to each other anymore because someone loves Nancy Pelosi and somebody hates. It's actually meant to cause strife and conflict and family breakups. It is. Neil deGrasse Tyson, unless you're highly familiar with this guy, it won't seem like much. But to those that just don't love his science, he is the most arrogant, obnoxious, irritating, as is Bill Nye, but it's his relative. He's palatable for most people because you haven't been given the dose of the Neil deGrasse Tyson castor oil that many of us have. So let's just take a break from this and go to this figure, okay? Whatever you thought about this figure, whatever you thought about the conspiracy of Dealey Plaza, it doesn't matter. If you were alive in the early 60s, you might not have liked him much. You might not have liked his politics. You might have been a Republican or a Libertarian or whatever. But see, you wouldn't have hated him to the same degree as all the other people I've just shown. And reality has seen to this over time. As decades go forward, the people that are the face and the key person that's most representative of that class, whether it be politics, celebrity, we have race issues now, we have gender issues now, we have LGBTQA, all of that. As decades go by, those that are the front man or woman for that camp or that group becomes more and more of a controversial, divisive figure where you either love or hate, which causes a lot of turmoil inside of groups of friends, family. I'm just saying, guys, we're seeing it so much now that how many times can you see this where you just kind of explain it away with the same old excuse? Well, it's just a coincidence. Or, Matt, controversial figures sell. These explanations are first grade, and they don't work anymore. Maybe you don't like my explanation that weigh out that reality itself is seeing to this, and it takes about 5 years to truly understand what I'm saying. If you've passed this to anybody, they're not going to have any idea what I'm saying, and that's going to sound crazy, I know. But all I'm asking is just to notice these trends. And how much of this do we have to see before it becomes unnatural? And it just can't be explained away with the same old coincidences every single time. When are you going to be the guy at the bar after the 7th supermodel comes and tries to hit on him, and the 8th to say, wait a second, there's something not right here with the world. Something else is going on, potentially something outside my perception. Even if you think my explanation is way out there or the stuff of the loony bin, that's fine. I'm just begging you, if this has been passed to anybody, to notice how unnatural all of this is. To me, reality gave itself away in 2016, and I'm gonna scale that back because that is loony bin stuff to a lot of people. The presentation of what you call politics is nothing more than WWE, WWF wrestling. At the end of the day, they go share the same $3,000 bottle of cognac. It's a presentation, a false presentation for and the people buy it for some reason. It all gave itself away as nothing, as something even more pathetic than the WWF, WWE in 2016, when you had Hillary Clinton facing off against Donald Trump. Now, people in little groups and Republican circles in red states, many loved Trump. But if you were outside of that group, that's the premise of this entire presentation. If you were outside of that group, you hated this man. And I mean more hated than any figure or candidate that's ever been presented in a, quote, presidential race. Same with Hillary Clinton. Hey, got the group of supporters. Outside, she is a loathsome, evil. I mean, people would literally probably walk from here to Timbuktu if it meant her losing the election. The whole point of this, guys, that there was no election. This is WWF wrestling. It does maybe they allow people to vote, fine, but both candidates are going to serve a much larger system. Corporations are much larger than politicians. And then there's other levels above that. I don't have time to explain it right now if you're not familiar with these types of discussions. But let's just go back to the basics. What are the chances of all the people that the Democrats could have put up? They put up, if you're not in her group, they put up the most hated, loathsome figure. That's the way she was viewed if you're not a lover of Hillary Clinton and you're not in her group. Who typically are Democrats in this country? Judges, chancellors, and provosts of universities, great scientists, thinkers, all these candidates, all this entire pool of candidates across the country. And is anybody right now saying, well, Matt, they're an unknown? Oh, so these known washed up politicians that people have learned to hate over decades and decades, like Hillary Clinton, and to a different degree, Donald Trump, because of all of his business dealings, controversial business dealings, etc. You're telling me an unknown who gets in front of a podium and who just immediately encourages goodwill, speaks eloquently, intelligently, they're not going to be voted for because they weren't known? People are dying for an unknown. They're dying for a candidate outside of this sick, corrupt system. So just the fact that you put up people that have been in the corrupt bog of this disgusting system they've been known as with the cronyism and I scratch your back, you scratch my back. Just the fact that they put up these candidates basically proves what I'm saying. If anything, let's just say, but what I believe is they do allow people to go vote, okay, and they count the votes. But both of these people will serve the system in the same way. They will serve the ultimate masters of the system in the same way, whether you believe they're corporate masters or Rothschilds or ancient families with money or the Queen, whatever you believe. They'll let the people vote, but then there is no difference between them. There's little differences, but the trajectory of government doesn't change. The line across the X and the Y axis, the trajectory of government doesn't change when you put in a Republican or you put in a Democrat. The same things happen. The debt goes up. The wars never stop. People actually believe there's a difference? I mean, how stupid are people? There's no difference. Just every single major area, there's no change. Well, the Republicans will talk about bans on abortion. Well, they can talk all they want, so people believe there's a difference. Does anything ever change? No. So they don't, even with their core belief set and tenets, when they get in and they control the House and the Senate and the presidency, nothing ever changes. How could this possibly be believed in? If anything were real, and you have these people on representing the Democrat Party, maybe Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein are on this board. Who knows? Ex-politicians. In 5 minutes, if anything were real, they would say, look, this Donald Trump figure is loathed outside of his little circle that loves him. We're taking a risk here putting Hillary up because she's just as hated. And they know from the focus groups, they know from the Gallup polls how hated she is, how polarizing she is. We have this university chancellor, the University of Virginia here. We have this person or that person, or a singer-songwriter, or a poet, anybody. You could put basically a brand new pair of shoes or boots up against Donald Trump. And if they presented themselves as friendly and they didn't have the baggage of being in politics for 30 years, they would have beaten him easily. The same on the Republican side. They said, well, I don't know. The Republican, say before the primary process, it all came out via 2016. The whole primary process is useless. The leaders of the Republican Party came out on record, one interview with Becky Quick, I guess, of CNBC, and said, it's a show. They said we don't put candidates up based on what primary voters vote for. They have it rigged so that the party puts up the candidate that it wants. Even that is a show, because ultimately both puppets are going to serve the system in the same way. But that's straying a little bit. Let's just go back to the basics. The Republican National Committee, the RNC, would have said, Hillary is so hated. Our polling shows that if we put up anybody, somebody that presents themselves as likable, that has basic conservative values, that it's going to easily beat Hillary. And the fact that it's an unknown is an advantage in this example. They would have never put up. So the point is, guys, I'm sorry for being so long-winded. Do you really think it's a coincidence that the 2016 election had the two most polarizing figures in the history of the world, and 90% of the people voted not because of the love of candidate, because of the hate of the other candidate? You really believe this show is real? Are you kidding me? And then Joe Biden. Are you kidding me? Donald Trump. Again, guys, they're all puppets. They all serve bigger masters. Joe Biden, of all the brilliant thinkers that the Democrat Party should be able to bring to a podium to get new voters, to actually bring over some conservatives, all these different groups, unknowns, people with high IQs, people that can present themselves at a podium, they bring this bumbling, stumbling idiot to the podium who has a 10-year history going back through the beginnings of the Obama administration of putting his foot in his mouth, generating hate from all those who are not in the hardcore blue state camps. I mean, he even once said to a mostly black audience, I forget where he was presenting during the midterm elections in like 2010. I don't know the date, but he said something like, if you let the Republicans take over here, they're going to put you all back in chains. He said that. And he has 50 other gaffes that are just as bad. And you believe this is real, that that's the best they could put up, and people will make excuses and say, well, he's a household name. No, people are dying for anybody that's outside of the system. It is incredible how people can't see this. And that will end this presentation.